2 years ago, a U.S. State Department employee named Brad Bishop was accused of murdering his entire family at their home in a Washington, D.C. suburb. No motive was ever established. Police say he disappeared, becoming one of the world's most elusive and most famous fugitives. But recently, a woman came forward to say she had spotted Bishop overseas. NBC News correspondent Fred Francis has been tracking this story for the last 3 months. Filed this report for the Today Show.
Very well.
For Nikki Ray, 2 decades have not erased the shock.
Horror. I'm just horror.
Bradford Bishop Jr. is now wanted for the murder of his mother, wife, and 3 sons.
On March 1st, 1976, at the State Department in Washington, Brad Bishop told co-workers he was going home sick. But a police report says he first stopped at a Sears store to buy a large hammer like this. That night, at his secluded home in Bethesda, Maryland, detectives say Brad Bishop went on a brutal, premeditated rampage.
He just went from room to room. There was blood everywhere. Blood on the beds. Blood on the floor. Blood on the walls. It was just everywhere.
Bishop's mother, his wife, and young sons were all quite literally hammered to death. For Bishop's family, the horrific struggle inside the house ended out here with a grisly scene more bizarre than the killing itself. Police say Brad Bishop turned the getaway car into a hearse. He came out here, loaded the 5 bodies into the back of the family station wagon, and disappeared into the night.
How could you do that? How could you touch? How could you... It's out of this world, macabre. Just out of this world.
They believe Brad Bishop headed south through Virginia, hundreds of miles, in the middle of the night, into North Carolina just before dawn. Curiously, investigators say Bishop came close to this secret training facility for the CIA and then stopped at a desolate place deep in the woods.
It was almost like I wanted to believe it was a mannequin. That can't be people laying in there, but obviously that was wrong.
North Carolina officers pulled the bodies of Bishop's family from an open pit.
Probably the worst I've ever witnessed and probably the worst I've ever heard about. Something struck them very hard, causing their skulls to crush.
Agent Louis Young says the victims were lit on fire with gasoline. It took 1 week to identify the bodies and find Bishop's fingerprints on a gas can. Agents say that gave Bishop a 7-day head start.
Mr. Bishop and his lady friend came into my store that particular day and proceeded to meander around.
Brad Bishop was seen with a woman just hours later at this sporting goods store in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Who was she? No one ever figured that out.
She was approximately 5'6", of medium heavy build.
After 3 weeks, a grand jury indicted Bishop for the murders. That same day, the FBI discovered his car, abandoned at this spot in the Great Smoky Mountains. A massive hunt with search dogs found only his scent on this trail, where it appears Brad Bishop had simply walked away.
I don't believe he stayed in this country. I think he traveled to Europe, and he's possibly there today.
There's no doubt in your mind he's out there.
None whatsoever.
But Sheriff Ray Kite concedes a graduate of the U.S. Army Intelligence School with years as a diplomat in Europe and Africa, extensive travel to places like Egypt, Greece, the Swiss Alps, a man fluent in 5 languages, someone like that could probably outsmart the police.
Very intelligent, very smart.
Since 1976, there have been hundreds of unconfirmed sightings around the world, but only 2 stand out. Bishop may have been spotted in Sweden and Italy by friends some 20 years ago. But now, a 3rd possible sighting by someone who knew Brad Bishop, perhaps the most credible of all, yet never revealed to the public. September 19, 1994, in Basel, Switzerland.
I turned to my husband and I said, that has to be Brad Bishop.
Her name is Jean, and she's so afraid of Brad Bishop, she's never given an interview until now.
He had what I call pepper and salt hair, and he had a little oval goatee beard.
Jean lived in the same neighborhood as the Bishops. She met them at school PTA meetings. She belonged to the same tennis club and saw Brad on this court week after week.
I don't think I am mistaken unless he has an absolute clone.
Jean was on vacation waiting for a train in Basel, Switzerland. Her husband had just walked away to check a departure board when a train window opened and a man looked out.
My instant reaction was, I know your face, and I half smiled.
Jean says the man in the window seemed to recognize her husband and stared for a long time.
Then suddenly this sickening shock went through me, and I thought, of course I know that face, it's Bradford Bishop's face.
But she says the man hid behind a newspaper, so Jean and her husband immediately boarded their train on a parallel track for a better view.
And I can see his face, and by now it's looking more strained than it was before. As his window passed my window, he threw his hands in the air and went, like that. To me, he was laughing a laugh of relief that he was getting away.
Convinced of her discovery, Jean called the FBI with a description of how she thinks Brad Bishop has aged, and she gave details about the train and its route. After reporting to the FBI, Jean expected the authorities to take quick action, to do a composite sketch of the man she thought was Brad Bishop, to take that picture here, to show it to railway employees, to passengers, to ride the trains. But after 3 years, Jean wonders what, if anything, was ever done.
What did you ever hear back from the FBI?
I didn't.
Ever?
Ever.
The FBI never called you again?
No.
Bill Hargraves is the FBI agent who took Jean's report. He says he did request help from the Swiss police through diplomatic channels.
I would have no idea as to what investigation actually took place by Swiss authorities.
Agent Hargraves acknowledges Jean's sighting at this train station is the strongest lead in nearly 20 years. But the FBI says it never heard back from the Swiss and did not follow up.
I don't know what they did.
Nothing, apparently, because the police chief in this city of Basel told us he never got the agent's request, never heard of Brad Bishop until we showed up.
Do you think the FBI went after Brad Bishop as aggressively as it could have?
In my opinion, no. We're looking for a murderer, and sometimes we don't get the cooperation we feel we should be getting.
The FBI insists its investigation has been thorough, but the sheriff claims the FBI has missed critical evidence.
All this really gnaws at you, doesn't it?
Of course it does. Someone assisted him to escape justice in this case.
And Sheriff Kite, who has been frustrated by this case for years, suspects the CIA knows something. In fact, the sheriff found a State Department document that says the CIA conducted a damage assessment of Bishop after the murders. That assessment claimed he was harmless.
We filed Freedom of Information requests with the CIA, and they denied having any knowledge of Mr. Bishop.
The CIA told NBC News it would not confirm a damage assessment and that it has no record of Bishop.
The CIA lied to you, Sheriff?
In my opinion, yes.
Bishop may look like James Bond here, but we found government documents that show he was a real spy for the Army, running sensitive missions to communist Yugoslavia in the 60s. On his own resume, Bishop once admitted he was a liaison between the Army and the CIA in Germany.
Oh, my belief is that he's a CIA agent.
Some people associated with Bishop do not share that belief, but close friend Nikki Ray knew him at his last foreign post in Botswana, Africa.
I think we all assumed he was a CIA agent or that he was part of the CIA.
So you really think it's possible that he's got a new name, a new job, a new life?
Yes, I do.
And why?
Well, I can only surmise that he's had some help from very high up people in the CIA, and they're possibly hiding him out.
How much does that bother you, Sheriff?
It really bothers me a lot. It just makes me more determined to hunt him down and bring him to justice.
But this story of the ultimate disappearing act has no end. 3 years after Brad Bishop may have been spotted aboard a Swiss train, we found the trail is cold.
Never seen that. No, never.
very cold.
No, I didn't. No, I don't think so. No, sorry.
Fred Francis, NBC News, Basel, Switzerland.
However, there is more. After that story aired originally this morning on Today on NBC, the Montgomery County, Maryland Sheriff's Office tells NBC News they received what they called dozens of telephone calls, people who said they had made possible sightings of Brad Bishop, potential sightings. They say they will keep us informed as to what they find out. Coming up as we continue here after a break, they say it's one of the last best places, and they want to keep it that way.